Hi, everyone. It's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about delegation, the dreaded delegation. Actually, this is an answer to a question from future tech pilot who asks, would you consider talking about delegation and what amount of power other people are comfortable with receiving? Like, I'm sure you've assigned a task but had to step in when the job wasn't done correctly. What is the dynamic of that interaction between boss and employee? Okay, let's talk about that because I want to start off by saying delegation is unavoidable. Unless you plan to make the whole game yourself, some parts are going to have to be done by other people. And you or someone else is going to have to decide that. So that delegation will be done. I have noticed a tendency, and it's always been around, for people who want to have the authority to make a decision, but they don't want the responsibility for what that decision is going to cause. And I don't like that. I think if you delegate, that is part of your authority, and then you're responsible for it. So you have to monitor and follow up on it. So delegation is something that I think comes with your position on the ladder of the hierarchy of a game development group. Juniors don't really have to delegate; they are delegated to. Seniors need to manage and delegate a little. They often have a few people under them. That's how they learn how to manage. Leads do it a lot. I know leads who don't really do a lot of work in the area they're a lead in. And I know some who do a lot of work, but all of them find time to delegate the other tasks in their area to the people who are going to do it. Now, there is a lead senior level, we call them principals. They're very rare. A principal is someone who doesn't have anyone they manage, but what that's balanced with is they're entirely responsible for some subset of the game. I've worked with principal programmers. They are involved, for example, for graphics. They do the graphics for the game. You know, the game rendering, shading, lighting. That's entirely what they do. They don't manage anybody, but they're then responsible for that part of the game working flawlessly. They're a senior who doesn't have to do any management. That's kind of rare. Usually, as you become a senior, you will start managing. So let me talk about what I try doing when it comes to delegation. I think of it as a two-pronged approach to delegation. If there's a task that I've either never done or know I am not good at doing, and that's another thing, you have to, as you get experience in the game industry, you have to accept and acknowledge those tasks that you are not good at. You've tried to do them, you're not good at them, other people are way better. That's just a fact of life. You're not going to be good at everything. So when I have a task that either I've never done before or I know I'm not good at, I get a lead for it. I get a lead person, and that person is responsible for that area of the game, including delegating out things. Now, this can happen in different ways. I've had a networking lead, a programmer who I basically hired because he was very experienced with networking code, and we needed multiplayer in the game, and he basically owned that. He saw the spec after he was hired about what needed to be done, and he owned that section of the code. And he would explain, hey, here's what the API is going to be. Here's how you other programmers call into my code, but I handle everything that happens inside. Great. Art is a perfect example of something I cannot do. I completely hand it off. I hire a lead artist, and that person handles all of it. So, did you like how Fallout looked? Great. I had nothing to do with that. Did you like how the Outer Worlds looked? Great. I had nothing to do with that. It's the lead artist. They decide the style, the look. Half the time, lead artists have discussions with other artists on things I not even can't tell the difference between. I literally probably can't tell the difference between it. I've seen them discuss color variation and skin shading and tones, and I'm like, I can't see it. It's all tan. So I'm just happy to get somebody who can handle that. And then we have things like narrative design, where I want to be involved in the storyline of the game. I want to be involved in the characters we're going to have and the quests we're going to have. But I know I cannot write those things, especially the dialogues of those characters. So I want to have someone there who is a lead who can handle it, but who knows I want to come to those meetings, I want to make suggestions, but I'm not going to be able to do the final product. So that's a perfect example of all the different ways I've done handing off the delegation to someone else. So for tasks I have done before, it's different, especially where I'm the lead or the director. For example, for seniors in areas that I'm the lead on, I will write their specs. I'm like, this is what we need out of this thing, but they implement the best way to do it. They decide on the data structure and algorithms, or create the API and tell other people here's how it's going to be used. I'm just saying, hey, this is what I need out of it. They also estimate the time it will take to do that task, and then I can ask questions about it, like, why is this taking so long? Why do you use this algorithm instead of this one? And guess what? They're a senior. They should know the answers to those questions. That's why you put them in charge of it. They've done things like this before. They should know how to answer those questions. For juniors, I will write the API or the class or the high-level description, whatever your language breaks that down into. I will write that for the junior, but then they have to be able to write the individual methods that go in there. Now, I will provide to those juniors my estimate for what those tasks will be. And if they want, I'll even say, this is what I've done before. I will suggest algorithms. I will suggest data structures. I will tell them places they can look stuff up that's really good, or things in the standard template library that'd be really good to write this stuff with. I usually base all this on my own work. Like I said, this is stuff I have experience in. So I'm just not going to, talk out of my hat. I'm going to say, look, I've done this before. I did this algorithm. I did it this way. It took me this long. If they want to do their own thing, I will want to know why they think that's better. And also, I will want to know their estimate, and it has to be in line with what my estimate would be. Otherwise, I'm like, that's great that you want to do it that way. That'll take a week. Why aren't you doing it this way? That'll take 4 hours. Explain it to me. So this, I'm assuming, like, even if you're a junior, you got trained somewhere in this, you've done a little bit, you should be able to explain to me your thought process. So that's how I tend to delegate stuff. Now, once it's delegated, you have to do management. Now, this doesn't all fall on the producers. Producers monitor stuff. Producers go around and ask people how much they've gotten done on something, how much time they have left. They manage those schedules. But then they have to go to the leads if intervention is needed. You can't expect a producer to know, oh yeah, I glanced at his network code and he's doing it wrong. Or I glanced at this model, and while it's been put together and textured, it's not rigged. And I told them how long to take a rig. Producers aren't going to do that. So the leads have to intervene and taking a look at tasks and see why they are taking longer than expected. When I do it, I ask to see, show me your work. Show me what you've done. Show me the code. Show me the script that you've written. If it's somebody supposed to design a system mechanic, what have you designed so far? What are you stuck on? Talk me through it as if you're going to present it to someone. And then we can discuss their approach to it. And usually I find that gets them past the roadblock. Like they got stuck on something that wasn't that important, or they got stuck on something that I'm like, you know what? Why don't you just do this for now? You can revisit it, but this will let you go on and finish the rest of it. The problem comes in when you have a particular person who is consistently taking too long with their tasks. I've had different ways I've handled this in the past, and I've done this on the same project sometimes and on different projects sometimes. I have swapped tasks between people at the same level. So 2 juniors, I swap tasks between them, or 2 seniors, I swap tasks. So let's say you have one guy and he's going through stuff and it's pretty good and he's about halfway done, and you have someone else who should be halfway done, but he's not. I will swap those 2 and say, hey, I want you to finish up this guy's work and you do this one, and I'll see what happens. I've even done that with myself on teams where I'm at the same programming level as several other people on the team. If they're taking a long time, I'll swap. I'll go, hey, I just started this, you just started this, but you haven't even gotten started. We're going to swap. And then, because you're actually, you're walking a mile in the other person's shoes, they can see things. They may get the new task and go, oh, I never would have thought of doing it this way. Okay, I can see why these things are that take this long. And sometimes you get their task and you're like, oh, I would not have done it this way. You're making it overly hard on yourself. Now, sometimes you get a task, you swap tasks with someone, and it turns out there was a lot of hidden complexity that you didn't account for. And you're like, oh. But if that's the case, it shouldn't keep happening with the same person. So if you do swap tasks and you don't see that hidden complexity and you finish it up pretty quickly and they were taking a long time on it, then you have to have a serious discussion with them. And this depends on the role and everything. But some of the things that have happened there is I've moved people to less time critical work. Like, here's something that needs to be done, but it just needs to be done before we go into QA. Nobody's going to be bottlenecked. No one's dependent on this work. So you can get it done. I still expect it done in a reasonable amount of time, but if it's not, no one else is tripped up over it. Sometimes I've talked about moving people to another project, because sometimes changing to a different programming language, changing to a different game engine, or even just changing to another lead is what they needed. They needed a different style of management. They needed a different level of language complexity, or maybe they understand another game engine better. And just switching them, suddenly they're happy and full speed again on that other project. That's happened too. And yes, once or twice it's led to demotion. I am not a fan of the Peter Principle. The Peter Principle states that some people, when people do good, they get promoted. And if that's the only thing that ever happens, and people eventually get promoted until they're at a level where they're not doing good, and then they stay there. So Peter Principle says eventually everybody's in a position they're not doing good at. My attitude is, okay, then take a step back at that point. I've done it myself, where I've worked on something, I didn't think it worked out well, I took a step down and said I'm going to do this level of work for a while. I have done that to other people once or twice, where I've said, okay, I've given you work, takes you a long time, or you do work that's substandard, maybe you get it done in time, but it's really buggy every single time. I've demoted them. I've taken someone from a senior programmer and moved them back to a staff. With all the associated, your pay will be cut, and all of this is going to happen. And I do that at the time of their review. And so then they have a few weeks to think about it. Sometimes I've had people leave and they go somewhere else. And I'm like, I will, give you a reference, but if you stay here, you're going to be one step down. Sometimes they've taken the demotion and they've done really, really well at that lower one and gone back up later. They just weren't ready yet for that step. And that happens. You have to give people a second chance. So those are all the different ways delegation works. It's pretty much you can think of it as how I delegate. Do I, put someone else in charge, or do I manage someone myself? And then how do I track what they're doing later? So I hope this helps, and I hope this answered your question, Future Tech Pilot.